Lisa was having dinner with her mom when she suddenly noticed something off. In the mirror, her mom looked dead. Lisa was just a kid, and she didn't really understand fear yet. She was more curious than anything. She glanced at her mom again, and her mom looked totally normal. So what was up with that reflection? Then it hit her. Her mother had died in a plane crash a long time ago. Her mom noticed Lisa staring at the mirror and turned around, confused but didn't see anything. She asked Lisa what she was looking at. Terrified, Lisa replied, "Aren't you supposed to be dead?" Her mom froze. She figured Lisa had just been having strange dreams lately, and gently he told her not to dwell on it. Then her mom went into the kitchen to wash the dishes. That's when Lisa heard this metallic scraping sound right next to her ear. Suddenly her mother's body started twisting in this horrifying, unnatural way.
Mom?
Turns out it was just a nightmare. Lisa and her daughter were still on the plane. Just as she was starting to settle down, that same metallic scraping sound came from above. She quickly asked Jack next to her if he'd heard it too, but he just gave her a blank look. Lisa figured she was just exhausted, so she headed to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face to try to snap out of it. But then she heard her mother's voice from outside the door. When she turned around, the bathroom door looked completely different. She pushed it open, and somehow she was back in her childhood home. Her mother's voice was coming from one of the bedrooms. Lisa yanked that door open, and she was right back on the plane. Lisa was totally bewildered. Everything that had just happened seemed like a hallucination. But just as she was heading back to her seat, she felt this dark presence behind her. When she turned to look, the shadow vanished into thin air. Her heart, which had just started to settle, was racing again. Lisa carefully edged backward, trying to get a better look. Suddenly, a hand landed on her shoulder. It was the flight attendant, telling her to get back to her seat. The plane was about to take off, but she'd definitely just seen something, hadn't she? Lisa got back to her seat and gave her daughter a kiss. That solid, real feeling helped settle her nerves a bit. The plane started taxiing and lifted off smoothly, and Lisa finally let herself breathe. Up in the front cabin, a businessman was about to enjoy a drink when he glanced back and noticed an artist behind him seemed to be sketching him. Curious, he struck up a conversation, but the artist had this unsettling look on his face. Then, out of nowhere, he said,
"Pendulum that dies down."
The businessman figured the guy was just a weirdo and dropped it. Before long, the few passengers on board had all drifted off to sleep. The two flight attendants up front just sat there motionless, their eyes completely blank, not a flicker of emotion. Suddenly, every window on the plane turned blood red. Countless bloody hands started pounding on the glass. But the two flight attendants didn't so much as flinch. Then the plane hit some serious turbulence and started shaking. The flight attendant told everyone to stay in their seats. One passenger suddenly couldn't breathe and collapsed face first onto the floor. Lisa jumped into action and had everyone help her lay the man flat. But as she was giving him CPR, the man's eyes shot open. He grabbed her by the throat and started muttering some bizarre incantation. Lisa shoved him off in panic, but the other passengers acted like they hadn't seen any of it. If anything, they looked freaked out by what Lisa had done. Then the man started convulsing. Jack kept calling Lisa's name, trying to snap her out of it. But that's when Lisa saw a black hand reaching out from the very back row, followed by this twisted, ghoulish face. Only when the man stopped convulsing and went still did the shadow finally disappear. Before anyone could catch their breath, the plane hit another violent patch of turbulence. Even the flight attendant got tossed into the air and slammed back down hard. Lisa screamed at her daughter to put on her oxygen mask and quickly put on her own. Thankfully, the plane stabilized after a moment. Lisa rushed to check on her daughter, and once she confirmed she was okay, she finally calmed down. That's when it all clicked, and she told Jack the truth. She said an old woman was hunting her. When Lisa was 7, she and her mother had been on a flight. It's just like this one. Just one flight running, only a handful of passengers, the whole 9 yards. As a kid, she dozed off shortly after takeoff. When she woke up, her mother was nowhere to be found, and someone had just collapsed in some kind of fit. She was about to go look for her mom when the plane started shaking violently, and she heard chanting behind her. She turned around to see an old woman muttering some kind of curse. Then the old woman opened her eyes, and there were no pupils, just empty whites. After that, the plane caught fire and went down. Lisa was the only survivor. Now it all made sense. That mysterious old woman had to be death itself, and she was back to finish the job. But to Jack, the whole thing sounded insane. He was convinced Lisa was just hallucinating. Lisa didn't want to argue, but she had no idea what to do next. Once the plane leveled out, her daughter showed her a drawing she just finished. She'd drawn the plane with her and Lisa sitting in row 19, the very last row. Lisa told her, "That's not our seat," but her daughter said she'd rather sit there. Lisa didn't have the headspace to deal with it. Her mind was spinning from everything that had happened. Then something occurred to her. She rolled up her pant leg. She'd had a scar there her entire life, but now it was gone. Just like that. Then she realized something else. With all the bizarre stuff happening on the plane, the captain had never once come out to address it. Everything was lining up with her theory. Suddenly, her daughter turned around and started whispering to someone behind her. Lisa frantically asked who she was talking to. Her daughter said there was was a little girl sitting back there. But when Lisa got up to check, there was no one there. Lisa realized this was looking more and more like what happened when she was 7. She scooped her daughter into her arms, terrified of what might come next. Then the flight attendant came on the intercom and announced that, due to all the incidents on board, the plane was making an emergency landing at Tolmachevo Airport nearby. Hearing that, Lisa felt the air get sucked out of her lungs, because that was the exact same destination as the flight she'd taken when she was 7. There was no escaping this disaster. Suddenly her daughter started crying, terrified. She told Lisa that the girl behind them said when a man caught fire, Mommy was going to leave him. Lisa fell into deep thought. Just then, medical alcohol that had spilled in the overhead compartment was dripping out right above the businessman. And the businessman, jittery as he was, had just pulled out a cigarette. Lisa rushed over to stop him, but it was too late. He lit the cigarette, the alcohol caught fire, and the man was instantly engulfed in flames. The old woman's terrifying face appeared in the fire. Lisa completely lost it.
What the hell do you want from me?
By the time she came back to her senses, the others had already put out the fire. The businessman was barely clinging to life. Lisa felt herself unraveling, but still, nobody else could sense the danger. Then she caught a glimpse of a black shadow darting through the cabin. She chased after it, desperate to figure out what was going on. In the window of the very last row, she saw herself, asleep on a couch. Inside that scene, she woke up. Everything that had just happened felt like a nightmare. Her daughter came over and told her to take a shower. They had a flight tomorrow night. Lisa quickly reached down and felt her leg. The scar was still there. Remembering the dream, she decided to cancel tomorrow's flight and just stay home, not go anywhere. She held her daughter tight, cherishing every second. But when she went to the bathroom, she heard that metallic scraping sound outside the door again. Lisa peered through the peephole. In the flickering hallway lights, that black shadow flashed by. Before she could react, she heard her daughter screaming. Lisa frantically searched the apartment, but her daughter was nowhere to be found. Then everything in the room started falling and crashing for no reason. She heard knocking at the door in her daughter's voice. Lisa flung the door open in a panic, and what she saw outside dropped her to her knees. When she came to again, she was back on the plane. Her daughter came running into her arms. At this point, she had no idea what was real anymore, but at least she was with her daughter. Then she turned her head, and the man who died earlier had transformed back into that nightmarish thing. Countless black hands shot out from the seats and grabbed Lisa, pinning her down. In her despair, she looked up and saw the seat number above her, 19. The image of the old woman casting her curse flashed through her mind. Then Lisa jolted awake again. She was completely shattered at this point. She turned her head, and the shadow had appeared again. Lisa decided she wasn't going to just sit there and wait to die. She grabbed her daughter and tried to get out of there, but a flight attendant came running and stopped her. The attendant was glancing nervously toward where the shadow had appeared. Lisa knew there had to be something hidden over there. Suddenly, one of the flight attendants started vomiting up water uncontrollably. Her daughter recoiled in horror, which meant her daughter was seeing it too. This was definitely not a hallucination anymore. Then the flight attendant's eyes rolled back and she collapsed. Lisa took off running. As she passed the artist's area, she noticed he seemed to be hiding from her, his pen flying across the page. Lisa snatched the sketchbook from him and discovered he'd drawn everything that had happened. He could see it all coming. When she saw what he'd drawn at the end of the corridor, she knew for certain that was the way out of this nightmare. But just then, the artist's whole studio went up in flames and vanished. Realizing something was very wrong, she turned and ran. Behind her, Jack was chasing her down, blood streaming from his eyes. Lisa forced herself to stay calm and used every ounce of strength to ram the door open. But behind that door was just another cabin. She opened door after door, but every single one led to another endless cabin. She was trapped in some kind of loop with no way out. She kept telling herself it was just a dream, but when she turned around, her daughter was gone. She screamed her daughter's name. Somehow her daughter was sitting in the very last row. Then the shadow started slowly approaching her. Lisa took off toward her, and the shadow morphed into a black mist and came rushing at Lisa too. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The shadow took on the face of 7-year-old Lisa. Memories from when she was 7 came flooding back, and finally Lisa understood what the old woman's chant had meant. All of this, everything Lisa had experienced over the past 20 years, had been a hallucination of 7-year-old Lisa. When that crash happened back then, the old woman hadn't wanted her to witness the horror of dying, so she'd cast a spell to put her into a deep sleep. But little Lisa had been fighting to stay conscious all this time. Time had been frozen on that day, so the present-day Lisa was still inside the dream. In reality, she was still 7 years old. Right at that moment, when Lisa and little Lisa collided, their memories merged. She rushed over to her daughter. Her daughter told her they would meet again and reminded her to feel everything carefully. In that instant, Lisa remembered her daughter's words, the drawing of them sitting in row 19, and the seat number 19 she'd seen when those black hands grabbed her. Lisa finally understood. This wasn't reality. As the plane was crashing, little Lisa woke up from the dream at that exact moment. With her tiny body, she helped her mother stagger toward row 19. With With Jack's help, they got into the row 19 seats. They put on their oxygen masks just as the plane plummeted and slammed into the river. Every passenger died, except the mother and daughter sitting in row 19. Little Lisa had traveled through 20 years of dreams to save her mother.